I forgot all my English and how I got it back. Have you ever felt like your English disappeared overnight? Like everything you learned was suddenly gone? In this episode, I share a powerful story of forgetting and reclaiming my English skills. It's not just a story of memory and language, but of resilience, habits, and how anyone can start again and win. It happened quietly. One morning, I sat at my desk to read a short English article, and I couldn't understand half of it. My mind went blank. Simple words looked unfamiliar. My confidence began to crumble. I thought, how could this be? I used to speak fluently, but here I was, struggling to follow basic sentences. It was a strange, painful realization. I had forgotten my English. At first I blamed stress. Maybe I had too much on my plate. Maybe I was just tired. But day after day, I faced the same wall. I could no longer follow English YouTube videos without subtitles. I hesitated before speaking. I forgot common words like instead, although, and discuss. I knew them once, but they didn't come to me anymore. I felt like I had lost a part of myself. For months, English had taken a back seat in my life. I'd been focused on other things: work, family, health. I hadn't read an English book in months. I hadn't listened to a podcast or had a conversation. The truth hit me. Language is like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. Slowly, silently, without warning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment I struggled with that article. I realized I had two choices: accept this loss or start over. But starting over felt scary. What if I couldn't get it back? What if I had lost too much? Still, deep down, I knew I had to try. I couldn't let this part of me disappear. The next morning, I opened YouTube and searched English listening for beginners. I decided to rebuild from the ground up. No shame, no pressure, just daily action. I chose short videos with subtitles and watched the same one 3 times. First with subtitles, then without, then with again. I took notes of every unfamiliar word. I said each word out loud 5 times. It was slow, but it felt right. After a week, I added simple English podcasts to my morning routine. I listened while making coffee or walking outside. At first, I understood maybe 40%, but that was enough. I didn't stop the audio when I missed something. I just let it play. My brain needed time to reawaken its English pathways. I had to be patient. Reading returned next. I picked up a short story, one I had read years ago, and gave it another try. This time, I highlighted unfamiliar phrases and read aloud to myself. My voice felt awkward at first, but day by day, it became smoother. I began to recognize patterns again. Sentence structures, linking words, expressions. My memory wasn't gone. It had just gone to sleep. To bring speaking back, I used shadowing. I picked one video every day and mimicked the speaker's pronunciation and rhythm. I didn't worry about being perfect. I focused on flow. I repeated whole paragraphs, mimicking their tone, pauses, and emotion. I sounded silly sometimes, but I kept going. My tongue was learning to move again. Every Sunday, I recorded a voice message to myself. I talked about my week, my struggles, and my progress. Listening to myself was hard. I noticed every mistake, but it also showed me how far I'd come. After 4 weeks, my voice had more confidence. My sentences were longer. My pauses were shorter. I was coming back. One important lesson I learned during this journey. It's not about speed, it's about consistency. Even 10 minutes a day makes a difference. Some days I did more, but I never skipped. I treated English like brushing my teeth. Non-negotiable. It was a part of my daily hygiene, not a task on a to-do list. To avoid burnout, I mixed fun with learning. I watched English comedy shows. I listened to English music and read the lyrics. I played word games on my phone. Every time I smiled during practice, it reminded me, language is joy. Learning should never feel like punishment. After 2 months, something magical happened. I had a dream in English. It was short, and I only remembered a few words, but it meant everything. My subconscious had switched back to English. That was the moment I knew I was reclaiming my language. This journey taught me more than just how to remember English. It taught me how to be kind to myself, how to show up daily, how to believe in progress, not perfection. I stopped chasing fluency and started enjoying the process. I became a learner again, and that mindset changed everything. If you've ever felt like you lost your English, you are not alone. Many learners face this, especially after long breaks. But the good news is, it's always recoverable. Language doesn't disappear. It just hides behind silence. And with time, effort, and love, it returns. It always returns. It's interesting how forgetting a language doesn't feel like a sudden fall. It's more like slowly turning down the volume on a song you once loved. You still remember the melody, but you can't hear the words. That's how it felt with English. Every word I once knew was still somewhere in my brain, but I couldn't access them easily. They were hiding in corners I hadn't visited in a long time. I realized I needed not just to relearn, but to reconnect. And reconnection begins with curiosity. So I became curious again. Curious about how English is spoken in real life. Not in textbooks, but in movies, podcasts, and everyday conversations. I started watching interviews, talk shows, and documentaries, not just for learning vocabulary, but to observe the rhythm of the language. How do native speakers emphasize certain words? How do they pause? When do they say, or, you know? These little things matter. Because language is not just words. It's music, expression, and feeling. One morning I watched an interview with a British actress, and I didn't understand half of what she said because of her accent. Instead of giving up, I watched it again with subtitles. Then I read the transcript. Then I mimicked her voice, her tone. I turned confusion into practice. That became my new rule. When I don't understand, I dig deeper. I explore, not retreat. Then came vocabulary building. I used to memorize long lists of words. This time, I did it differently. I created a word journal. Every new word I heard or read, I wrote it down. But I didn't stop there. I wrote a sentence with it. I drew a little picture. I wrote the definition in my own words. Then, at the end of each week, I reviewed my journal. It became a personal dictionary, built from my real experience. And because I created it myself, I remembered everything better. Next, I returned to grammar, but not in the traditional sense. I didn't open a grammar book. I analyzed real sentences. I take a sentence from a podcast or article and ask myself, why is this in the past perfect? Why did they use would have instead of could have? Grammar became a puzzle, and solving it felt like detective work. It was fun, not boring. But the biggest change came when I stopped studying English and started living in English. I changed the language of my phone and apps. I wrote my grocery list in English. I left sticky notes around my home with English expressions. Brush your teeth on the mirror. Stay calm on the door. You're doing great on the fridge. My house became an English environment. I was surrounded, and that made all the difference. One technique that helped me tremendously was self-conversation. Every morning, before talking to anyone, I talked to myself in English. I described my dreams, my plans for the day, how I felt. It was awkward at first, but then it became natural. I was training my brain to think in English again. And once your thoughts begin in English, fluency follows. Around this time, I joined an online English speaking group. It was scary. What if I made mistakes? What if people laughed at me? But no one did. In fact, they made mistakes too. We all supported each other. We shared tips, stories, and laughter. Speaking with real people, even strangers, reminded me that language is connection. It's not about being perfect. It's about being understood. I also set small goals. One week, my goal was to use 10 new phrasal verbs. The next week, it was to watch one TED talk daily. Small steps. No pressure. Just gentle movement forward. And every small success gave me energy to continue. I realized something important. Motivation doesn't come before action. It comes after. You feel motivated because you did something, not the other way around. After 3 months of daily practice, something beautiful happened. I sat with a cup of tea, listening to an advanced English podcast, and I understood everything. Not just the words, but the humor, the sarcasm, the cultural references. I laughed out loud. That moment made me cry. I had come back, and I had done it my way. There's something magical about recovering a skill. It doesn't just return, it returns stronger. Why? Because now you respect it more. You value it. You know how fragile it is, and you're willing to protect it. So I made a promise to myself. Never again will I let my English fade. Even on the busiest days, I will do something. Read a page, speak a sentence, listen for 5 minutes. English is not just a language. It's a doorway, a mirror, a tool for understanding the world. And now, it's a part of me again. Sometimes we think forgetting means failure. But forgetting is just part of the learning cycle. It reminds us to return, to renew, to re-engage. And each time we do, we come back wiser, more curious, more humble. Looking back, I'm grateful I forgot. Because in the process of remembering, I learned more than grammar or vocabulary. I learned resilience. I learned how to be patient with myself. I learned that progress is not a straight line. It's a dance, with steps forward and back. But the music never stops. You too can remember your English. You too can come back. One day at a time, one word at a time, one smile at a time. There's a special kind of fear that comes with using a language you feel you've forgotten. It's not like stage fright where you worry about performance. It's deeper. It feels like you've lost a part of your identity. You fear that people will see through you, that they'll realize you're not as fluent as you once were. And the worst part is, sometimes you convince yourself you were never good at it in the first place. But let me tell you something. Memory is tricky. Just because something feels gone doesn't mean it is. And every time you speak again, even with hesitation, you prove to yourself that it's still there. The way I rebuilt my English was through tiny acts of courage. I started by ordering coffee in English at a local shop, even though I was nervous. I asked for a medium cappuccino with oat milk, and I messed up the word oat. But the barista smiled and understood. That smile gave me confidence. Then I started talking to customer support chats in English, not switching to my native language even when I got stuck. These were little things, but they added up. I also started recording myself. I'd open the voice recorder and talk for 5 minutes about my day. Then I'd listen and write down the parts I struggled with. Did I repeat words too much? Did I forget basic connectors like although, however, or actually? I made a checklist. And every week, I tried to reduce one weakness. My speech slowly became smoother, not because I studied pronunciation rules, but because I practiced being honest with myself. And then there was reading. Oh, how I had missed reading in English. I went back to my favorite novel, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, in English this time. I read slowly, with a pencil in hand. I underlined metaphors. I copied whole paragraphs into my notebook and rewrote them in my own words. It was like rediscovering a favorite song in a new key. Reading reconnected me to the beauty of language. Not just the function of it, but its soul. Soon I began journaling again. I wrote my thoughts, fears, dreams, all in English. I didn't care about mistakes. In fact, I welcomed them. Mistakes became signs of growth. They meant I was trying. They meant I was stretching my limits. And with each entry, I felt my confidence growing. I wasn't just recovering English. I was recovering a part of me that I had let go. Another thing that helped immensely was using English as a tool, not just a subject. I started watching science documentaries, history videos, and psychology podcasts in English. Not just to learn English, but to learn through English. When your brain is focused on the content, not just the language, you process words more naturally. You learn because you're curious, not because you feel obligated. There's something powerful about integrating English into your lifestyle. I began setting my goals in English. I'd write, drink more water, go for a walk, and finish this project by Friday on sticky notes. These small goals, when read in English, made the language feel practical, useful, real. I wasn't just learning English, I was using it. And that changed everything. One of my favorite breakthroughs came during a phone call. I had to speak with a travel agent in English, and I was terrified. But I made it through the entire call, explaining my problem, asking for options, and confirming my booking. When the call ended, I burst into laughter. I had done it. It wasn't perfect, but it is real. That phone call felt like a victory parade. Slowly, my confidence turned into consistency. I built a weekly schedule, Monday and Wednesday for listening practice, Tuesday and Thursday for speaking, Friday for writing, Saturday for reading, and Sunday for review and rest. I tracked my progress. I didn't punish myself for missing a day. I just returned the next day. And that rhythm kept me steady. And then came the moment I knew I was back. I was watching a movie, and a fast conversation happened. I caught the joke. I laughed at the same time as the characters. That laugh felt like a trophy. It wasn't just about understanding. It was about feeling the language again. I didn't need to pause. I didn't need subtitles. I was part of the moment. Language is not just about grammar and words. It's about trust. You have to trust yourself to make mistakes. You have to trust the process. You have to trust that your brain is more powerful than your fears. And most importantly, you have to trust that even when you forget, you are capable of remembering again. So if you've forgotten your English, if you feel like it's too late, I want you to know, it's not. Language lives in you. It sleeps, but it doesn't die. And you have the power to wake it up, not all at once, but slowly, gently, with love and commitment. You can start today. Speak one sentence out loud. Write one paragraph in your notebook. Watch one video and try to shadow the speaker. Small steps. They add up. They always do. This journey is not about being perfect. It's about being present. Showing up for yourself. Believing that your voice matters. And it does. The world is waiting to hear you again. You haven't lost your English. You've just taken a break. And now, it's time to come back. Stronger, wiser, and more motivated than ever before. One of the most valuable things I learned from this journey was the importance of forgiveness. Specifically, self-forgiveness. I used to beat myself up for losing my English. I blamed myself for not practicing, for letting life get in the way. But guilt doesn't help. It only adds weight to your mind. When I finally forgave myself for forgetting, I created space to begin again. And that shift in mindset changed everything. I no longer saw my break from English as failure, but as a pause. And pauses can be powerful. Even music needs silence between notes to sound beautiful. I also realized that the way we approach language learning as adults needs to be different from how we did it as students. It's not just about vocabulary lists or grammar drills. It's about connection. Every time I learned a new word, I asked myself, how can I use this in real life? Can I use it to describe my feelings, explain an idea, or tell a story? I stopped memorizing for the sake of memorizing. I started building relationships with words. And just like human relationships, it took time, patience, and daily effort. Eventually, I started helping others. I joined an online language exchange group. I spoke with people who were learning my native language, and in return, they helped me with English. At first, I thought I wasn't good enough to help anyone. But I quickly discovered that helping others speak gave me more courage to speak myself. When you teach, you learn twice. You learn the material, and you learn about yourself. That community gave me energy, accountability, and a sense of belonging. I began writing little essays and posting them in English forums. Not for likes or praise, but to put my thoughts out into the world. I wrote about things I cared about: mental health, personal growth, travel stories, and lessons from failure. And when people responded kindly, I felt seen. Not as a student, not as a learner, but as a voice. That feeling fueled my desire to improve. I wasn't chasing fluency anymore. I was chasing expression. The ability to say what I mean, how I mean it. Then I discovered something surprising. My English didn't return in the same shape it left. It came back stronger, more mature. My vocabulary was richer, not because I knew more words, but because I understood them more deeply. I used simpler words with more power. I knew when to pause. I used silence as a tool. I listened more and interrupted less. My English had evolved with me. And that realization brought tears to my eyes. I hadn't lost anything. I had been growing quietly all along. I want to tell you something very honestly. Language learning is not a straight road. It's a loop. You revisit what you once knew, and you see it differently. You find new meaning in old phrases. You discover fresh confidence in familiar sounds. So if you feel like you're going in circles, don't give up. That's part of the process. That's how growth works. In loops, not lines. My daily habits became sacred. I didn't wait for motivation. I made English part of my environment. My phone was in English. My to-do list was in English. I watched comedy in English. I dreamed in English. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I allowed myself to be messy, to stumble, to not always get it right. And through that permission, I found freedom. Eventually, I looked back and realized that I no longer felt anxious before speaking. I no longer translated in my head. I didn't avoid conversations. I welcomed them. Not because I had become native, but because I'd become comfortable. And that, my friend, is the true definition of fluency. Not perfection, but comfort. I also became aware of my triggers, the situations that made me doubt my English. A fast conversation, a formal email, a phone call with bad reception. Instead of avoiding them, I faced them. Slowly, one at a time. I wrote formal emails with templates. I practiced fast conversations with podcast transcripts. I made phone calls when I was feeling calm. And each success, no matter how small, rewired my brain. I was no longer afraid. I was ready. There's one moment I'll never forget. I was giving a presentation in English to a group of colleagues from different countries. At the end, one person said, "You speak like someone who really believes in what they're saying." That comment meant more to me than any grammar correction. Because that's what language is for. To connect, to express, to believe. Not to impress. If you're still reading this, I want you to know, it's okay to forget. It's okay to fall behind. What matters is that you rise again. Pick up your notebook, play that podcast, watch that video, speak that sentence. Today, not tomorrow, not next week, today, because your English is not behind you, it's within you. And every word you say brings it closer to the surface. Your voice is waiting. Your confidence is waiting. Your growth is waiting. All you need to do is show up. With honesty, with courage, with consistency. You don't have to be fluent to start speaking. You have to start speaking to become fluent. And you don't have to be confident to begin. You have to begin to build confidence. So go ahead, open your mouth, make a mistake, laugh at yourself, try again. Because one day you'll look back and say, I forgot my English, but I got it back. And now it's stronger than ever.